Welcome to the Friday edition of Game On. Remember how I said we wanted to do more giveaways? Well, looky here. 2 tickets to the Greyhounds game on Saturday, October 20th when they take on the Hamilton Bulldogs. We will have all of these details on how to enter during Tuesday's edition of Game On, but for today's episode, we're going to keep adding fuel to the fire, which in this case is Leafs media coverage. It's hard to ignore just how hot of a start they are off to, so Matt and I dive into the topics of specific players, namely Auston Matthews, Morgan Rielly, and Frederik Andersen. A lot can be said about these 3 individuals, so see what Matt and I think on this edition of Game On. On this day in 1968, the 19th Summer Olympic Games kicked off in Mexico City, Mexico, marking the first Olympics to be held in Latin America. 1979 saw a pair of NBA superstars debut, and history was also made. Boston Celtics guard Chris Ford scored the first 3-point basket in NBA history in the first quarter of a 114-106 win versus Houston at Boston Gardens. That same game marked the debut of Boston legend Larry Bird. Another future Basketball Hall of Famer forward, Magic Johnson, made his debut for the Los Angeles Lakers at the San Diego Clippers. Lakers win 103-102. In 1991, Doug Flutie of the BC Lions sets the CFL passing record of 582 yards in a single game, despite losing to Edmonton 45-38 in overtime. 1992 saw Canadian Bret the Hitman Hart beat Ric Flair for the WWF heavyweight title. The 1993 MLB American League Championship was also concluded today, where the Toronto Blue Jays beat the Chicago White Sox 4-2. In 1999, Pat LaFontaine formally retires from the NHL due to lingering concussion problems. And in 2016, Auston Matthews becomes the first player to score 4 goals in his NHL debut for the Toronto Maple Leafs at Ottawa. Happy birthdays go out to the scariest name in the NHL, former NHLer Miroslav Satan, and also a happy birthday goes out to current NHLer Mike Green. Satan turns 43 and Green turns 33. Welcome back inside the ONNtv studios, where I'm joined by Matt Stefano, and as you can tell by the guy pictured behind me, we're going to keep beating that dead horse. We got to keep the Leafs in the media, right? They don't get enough coverage. But anyway, Matt, we're here to talk about a few specific players that have been on the Leafs so far through the season, because they've been putting on an absolute show. Now, before we get into specific players, what would you give the Leafs as a grade for their performance so far through the season?
I'm going to say B+ for their performance because, again, their offense is spectacular. They are just so deep up front. They got John Tavares, Auston Matthews, Nazem Kadri, and again, they're missing William Nylander due to contract negotiations. He's back in Sweden, but when you look at the Leafs roster, especially Tavares and Matthews, they're a very dangerous 1-2 punch, and they are really making this team go right now. But the thing that I gave them a B+ is because they could work a bit more on their defense because, again, like,
Absolutely.
you know, they need defense. And to have good defense, you got to protect your goalie because I think that Freddie Andersen, sure, his wins are good, but his numbers could be better if he had better defense because they are scoring lots so far, but then they're giving up a lot of goals too.
Now, we're going to save Anderson for the next block, but this one we're going to talk about Matthews a little bit. What would you give Matthews as a grade for just Matthews' play alone?
I'd say A+ right now because, again, he's off to a rocket start, leading the league. And when you look at him, his shot is just so dangerous, it's deadly. And him and Tavares work really well together. 2 first overall picks. They are world's class. And I'd have to say Dubas has done a good job bringing Tavares in to play alongside Auston Matthews. Because looking at the Leafs roster now, like 2 first overall picks, Matthews and Tavares. When Pittsburgh had 2 first overall picks in Marc-Andre Fleury and Sidney Crosby, they ended up winning 3 Stanley Cups with those 2. So I think the blue and white is heading in the same direction.
Well, we can only hope so. But now Matthews, you've seen how lethal he is on the power play, playing with guys like Tavares, Kadri, and the plethora of talent that they have, and the rate that he's scoring at. Is there Where do you see it slowing down? He's on pace for something like 148 goals. There's no way he's scoring that many goals. That's just not, you can't sustain that kind of record. What do you think he ends the season with? How many goals?
I'd say anywhere between 45 to 50 at this point. But the thing with Austin Matthews is, like, you know, in the past, like, he's had a few injury problems too. But whenever he gets playing time, like, he's a big point getter. So I'd say, like, you know, if Matthews stays healthy, and you know, he doesn't have suspension problems.
He's not really that player.
Yeah, he won't get suspended because he's not a goon or anything. But looking at Austin Matthews, yeah, fingers crossed. Like looking at Austin Matthews, if he stays healthy, doesn't get injured, and you know, continues to play the way he can, then he's gonna end up with 50 goals easily.
And if he scores 50 goals, he's going to be asking for a lot of this, a lot of money. How much do you think Matthews is going to end up signing for? We saw McDavid's deal, where at the time when he signed was around 12% of Edmonton's cap. I'm not exactly sure. It's about $11 million. I'm not sure on the exact number, so pardon me, internet trolls there. But what would you say Matthews is looking to sign for? The rumored number is around $12.5 million, and I'd have to say he's probably going to get it.
I'm going to have to say anywhere between 12.5 to 13 million. That would be my guess because, like, look at the type of player Austin Matthews is. A first overall pick. He's making the team go, and I think that they really need to reward this guy. But looking, like, you know, remember when Phil Kessel played with Toronto? Look how much they gave him. 8 years, and I think it was like, you know, 64 million.
Yeah, about 8 million per year.
Yeah,
yes.
But then they ended up trading the guy to Pittsburgh, and he ended up winning a couple Stanley Cups with them. So again, they had to pay him the rest of that money. And I don't know, I think people were expecting more for Phil Kessel, but like when he played with Phaneuf and then, you know, Van Riemsdyk was still on that team too, but again, like they got rid of Phaneuf, they got rid of Kessel.
Van Riemsdyk,
yeah, but when Kessel and Phaneuf were on the team, like maybe they're causing some off-ice issues too. I'm not too sure because I don't know why they really got traded because Toronto was not making the playoffs. They weren't winning with those guys, and they pay them all that amount of money for what? And then John Lupul gets injured. He misses a whole season. So, again, they got Lupul on the team in the trade. They got Kessel on the team in the trade. And then they got Phaneuf on the team in the trade. And all three of them are gone now. So I think these youngsters like Austin Matthews, first overall pick, the young blood is sure panning out for this team.
And for a guy that seemingly watched a lot of hockey for the last, well, I'm sure the entirety of your life since you've been a hockey fan, you've seen a lot of guys with a lot of really, really excellent shots. Where would you put Matthews in the league for his shot?
I'd say right now, it's pretty hard to say because a lot of them do have heavy shots. Like, are you asking me like maybe top 5 or top 10?
Yeah.
I'd say right now he's in the top 5 for the best shots in the league, yeah. I'd rate him like maybe 3rd.
Behind who? I would say the guys giving him competition, I would say Austin has a better snapshot and a better wrister than Ovechkin. But when you get Ovechkin teed up in those hash marks, that's the best shot in the league. You've also got guys like Stamkos that's set up in that same office that Ovechkin does. He's got a great slap shot. You look at a guy like Nikita Kucherov who's coming throughout the league. Patrick Laine. Winnipeg fans know it well that his shot is lethal, just as so as Matthews is. Would you say Matthews is on the same level as Laine with his shot? Better? Worse?
I'd say about the same at this point because, you know, like Matthews has good line mates, but again, like I'd say like, you know, right now it's about the same as Laine, but when I said that Matthews was 3rd on my list, who do you think was my top 2? Ovechkin's 1, Stamkos is 2, and then you brought up those guys. So again, like, you know, Ovechkin I think has the best shot in the league, Stamkos is 2nd, and Matthews is 3rd, but I'd have to say, like, you know, for rankings, Laine's behind him, but at this point I think they have about the same shots.
Well, right after this quick break, me and Matt are going to dive into a couple of other of Leafs in the form of Morgan Rielly and Frederik Andersen. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Game On, where we talked about Austin Matthews. Now it's time to dive into a couple of other of Leafs who are having a great season and maybe one that's kind of flying under the radar. So let's talk about Morgan Rielly. As we were saying during the break, Rielly just set the modern era record for the best start by a defenseman over the first 5 games with 12 points, beating Bobby Orr that had 11 points. Riley is seeming to emerge as somebody that's really capitalizing on the power play, somebody that's been able to quarterback it. I mean, and to say you're quarterbacking a power play that's got Austin Matthews and John Tavares on it's quite the statement. When does the magic run out? We talked about the magic running out for Matthews. There's no way he can sustain 148 goals for the whole season. But where does that magic run out for Riley? Is it just because it's October and teams are trying to figure it out, or is this the year of Morgan Riley?
Well, as a Leaf fan, I say I hope this is a year for Morgan Riley. But again, it's October. Players are just getting into the swing of things. And that's how October is. Because once the players hit the ice in October, they want to pan out right away. So I think that's the thing with Morgan Riley. But again, I'll use an example. Tim Brent, remember Tim Brent for the Toronto Maple Leafs? I've seen him play with the Windsor Spitfires, and when they got Tim Brent in a trade a few years ago, they were thinking, can Tim Brent score 82 goals this season, and then he doesn't end up scoring 20? Not even Crosby scores 82 goals a season. Not even Ovechkin scores 82 goals a season. So I'd have to say, Riley's off to a good start, but I think, he might have a few off games, if his defensive mate gets injured or they change it up a bit. But no, I think that it's October, but I do hope that Riley continues to play the way he can.
And the one thing for me is with Riley is I don't think he'll slow down to the point where it's not going to be. I don't want to say he's a number one yet because he's not. He's almost there. If he keeps his play up, he might cement himself as one. But the thing with Riley is when you're playing on that power play, I think it's without a doubt they have the best power play unit in the league, at least for the time being. I mean, Tavares, Matthews, Kadri, Marner on the other point with Riley. Riley can basically pass it to any one of those guys and almost guarantees himself an assist. So playing on that power play, I believe that he's going to keep it pretty good throughout the season. Last season, he hit 50 points. Can he do it again this year?
I think so, because when you look at the Leafs roster, they are just so deep. And Brian Burke, he was the guy that drafted Morgan Riley when Burke was a GM. And I remember when Burke got him, he loved this guy. We've seen, he got this guy in the first round. And looking back to Luke Schenn when the Leafs got him in the draft that year, they traded up for the 5th overall pick. They drafted Luke Schenn, and he only had 7 goals coming out of junior. But then the thing is, he made the NHL as an 18-year-old, I believe it was, 18, 19. And his first season, he was young. He played on a team that didn't make the playoffs. His numbers weren't completely the best, but he logged a lot of ice time. But now he's out of Toronto. But I think right now, Morgan Riley, he's the real deal out of all those first-round picks they got for defensemen.
Yeah, let's hope that he can keep up putting those numbers that he has been. Now let's turn the page over to Anderson. Anderson, as you said earlier in the show, that his numbers aren't good. He's got a goals against average that's over 3. His save percentage is under 900, which in today's league, that's not good enough to keep you on a team. I feel as though Anderson's been playing a lot better than those numbers have reflected. He's come up with some big timely saves when the teams needed it. And I don't think those numbers are fair. He's traditionally had very, very bad Octobers. But how do you think Anderson's been playing as of late?
I'd say he's been playing okay, but the thing is, if your defense, your defense has to help you out. But like they say, you could have so much talent up front, but if you don't have a goalie, you're not going to go far.
Right.
Because I think, sure, the Leafs are going to have some off nights, where the defense maybe doesn't play well, but you always need your goalie to back you up. You can't always rely on your defense to keep the puck out of your zone, because you're going to have nights where you're going to face 40 to 50 shots a game, and he needs to be standing on his head, and he needs to save a goal for his team.
Right. Like I said before, he's making these timely saves. As the game in Detroit last night, he was making some good movements across the net, making some pretty big saves. But the numbers, they aren't being too nice to him. I think it's just a case of the Octobers where he's going to kind of get out of it. The team will structure their defensive a little bit differently. Like we said, it's October. Everybody's just trying to get their feet underneath them, put some pucks in the net, and have some fun. I think November is going to be a real telling month. November to December for the Leafs. Can Austin keep it up? Can Tavares keep it up? Can Riley keep it up? Can Anderson improve? That he's always statistically proven that October is his worst month and that he does get better. What point do you think this gong show of just goal scoring, goals and goals and goals ends for the Leafs and it goes back to more traditional 4-3 games, 3-2 games?
I'd say maybe February, because I noticed that, like,
Really?
the second half of the season, that's when it starts to get harder because, like, teams want to make the playoffs, then you got the trade deadline, which happens, and then teams start loading up, and that's when the teams really start to fight. As April starts coming towards, as teams start heading towards April when the Stanley Cup playoffs start, that's the thing about hockey season. Like, October is kind of a tricky month because, like, players are just trying to fit in. They're trying to find where their game is. And the rookies that just came out of junior are learning how to skate. And that's the thing. Like, the first half of the season's usually like that. But I guess right now for Anderson, it's better that, like, he starts the way he is now, but improves later on. Because you don't like to see a goalie have a great start and then have a mid-season slump. That's the worst thing.
I think what's best for Anderson right now is how hot the team has been. Nobody's really talking about Anderson's numbers. Nobody's really questioning his play. Sure, he's let in a couple soft ones, but the team's performing great. So I think it's going to be a feeling out process over the next couple of months to see whether these guys can keep it up or whether maybe the 18-wheeler goes flying off the cliff like Brian Burke once infamously said. But time will tell, and when it does tell, Game On will fill you in. And that's it. The weekend is upon us yet again. Next Tuesday, you'll have the details to our Greyhound ticket giveaway. But if you follow Sault Online and ONNtv closely on Facebook, you might just get a bit of a head start. I want to wish everyone a safe weekend, and I can't wait to see you all again next Tuesday to Friday at 8:30 p.m. on TV.